Hey, I'm very concerned about the future. I've been at this since 1980, and I've never seen a decline that we're looking at now. One of the trends that we're forecasting, you go back to our Trends Journal magazine on February 22nd, 2022, 2 days before the Ukraine war started. And the magazine headline read, "From COVID war to Ukraine war to World War." World War III's begun. They say it's a proxy war between NATO and the United States. It's not a proxy war, they're at war. The United States has sent in over $100 billion of aid and weapons to Ukraine since this broke out. This is a country, the United States, where 63% of the people are living paycheck to paycheck. And they just sent over $100 billion over there. This is a country where they just passed a defense budget of about $860 billion as the homeless situation in a city near you just keeps getting worse. Look at the facts of what's going on. Again, we only write what they put out there. And you have this guy who, the Prime Minister of Sweden and the President of France, Macron, met earlier this week. And they say, quote, "The two leaders reaffirmed Europe's determination to support Ukraine in the 10th month of the Russian offensive." Quote, "The Ukrainians need our support more than ever," said Macron. Quote, "The victory of Ukraine is existential for Europe and for the whole world," said the Swedish Prime Minister. Wait a minute. You mean what's going on between Russia and Ukraine is existential for the whole world? You mean the people down in Bolivia, Argentina, Ghana, Somalia? I mean, what are we talking about over here? They're ramping this thing up into World War III. It's begun. And there's going to be a false flag or a nuclear exchange. NATO chief says sending more weapons to Ukraine, you can't make this up, is the quickest path to peace. Quote, "It may sound like a paradox, but military support for Ukraine is the fastest way to peace," said Jens Stoltenberg, the guy that runs the NATO. Well, what am I, 6 years old? Who are you talking to? More weapons of death are going to bring us to peace? So this is serious what's going on. And that's my greatest concern, because there are a lot of positive trends out there that are going to escalate society. But if this war keeps ramping up, it's the beginning of the end. Well, that's what I'm saying. They say, the United States said, we quoted, and the guy, Ned Price, one after another, saying that the guy Sullivan, that this is not a time for peace. This is not a time to talk. Oh, by the way, you were mentioning about celebrating the Epiphany. What is it, the birth of Christ? The Prince of Peace? Oh, no, we're not going to talk about that. We're not going to talk about the Prince of Peace. Hey, how did Christmas sales do? Can't you see where this is going? Again, as I said, there's going to be a false flag or a nuclear exchange to make this official. They said that the World War II began when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. You go back to July 1941. Do you know what happened? Japan, you could Google this up, History Today. Japan had the nerve to go into French Indochina. And Franklin Delano Roosevelt took all the assets of Japan that they had in the United States because they went in there because they were going to go into China. So they took over French Indochina. And they cut off all the oil supplies, 88% of the oil supplies going into Japan. And Japan needs 100% of the oil. And Japan's trade dropped by 3/4. This is before Japan bombed Pearl Harbor. They never talk about that. Oh, and by the way, they put sanctions on Japan for going into French Indochina. What were the French doing over there in Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos? Do you see what I'm saying? And they talk about, the Japan was stealing the rubber and other tin and that they needed. That's all this is ever about. So what I'm saying to you is that on the economic front, we are in a very dangerous position here. And if this war continues to go on like it is going to crash the economies. All things are connected, like the blood which unites us all, said Chief Seattle. Japan hit its highest inflation rate in 7 decades. The sanctions that they put on Russia have, the quote from Biden, it was going to punish Putin. It didn't punish Putin, it punished the people. Again, then you look at the headlines going on and on from place after place. China, December manufacturing contracts at its sharpest pace in almost 3 years. Wall Street Journal, Chinese economic activity takes big hit. It's one after another. And again, they're making a very bad situation worse by ramping up the war. So let's go back to the reality. Let's go back to 2019, not ancient history. Happy New Year. At that time, Germany was a fraction of going into a recession. Let's go back to September of 2019. Hey, remember the repo markets where the Federal Reserve dumped in $10 trillion between September 2019 to January 2020 so they could keep pumping up the markets because they needed more cheap money? Now let's go to the COVID war. They locked down the world. And we're talking about why China's in so much trouble with their zero COVID policy. The businesses that they've destroyed in China and around the world are incalculable. Oh, you're talking about Italy? Now they're talking about Italy, and I think it was the IMF or one of them just came out, that they're facing the worst financial crisis of all of them concerning their debt level. And look at what's happened to the businesses. So now let's put it all together. We're looking at what happened and why it happened. So when they began the COVID war, they locked down everything. Stay at home. You can't go to work, but hey, here's some cheap money for you. Here, go on. Shut up. Here's some money. You got a business here. We're going to give you money. Oh, we're going to print, we're going to go to zero and negative interest rates. Well, they stayed on negative interest rates, in Europe for how many years? Oh, only 8. In the United States, zero interest rate policy. The market should have crashed in 2020. No, we had a real estate boom. We had a high-tech boom. People were buying and fixing up. Here's more cheap money. Here's cheap money. But now, let's go back to the facts. We had the BS from Janet Yellen. Oh, by the way, taken over by the Federal Reserve because she was the head of the Fed and now our Treasury Secretary, along with the guy playing the Fed head, Powell, going on for almost 2 years. Celente, you're full of baloney, and so are you other people. There is no inflation. It's only temporary. No. It's only transitory. They lied about it. They knew it was real. Same thing with Lagarde. So they could keep pumping in that cheap money. Now here's the big lie. Now they're saying inflation will get better because it was only caused by the supply chain disruptions, not our cheap money and our zero interest rate policy. You see where this is going? So here's the deal. If the Federal Reserve raises interest rates in February 1st, even 25 basis points, it's going to keep pushing the markets down. However, being that it's all about the bottom line, they may be less aggressive in raising interest rates, and that's why you're seeing gold prices going up.